Hey, let's talk about actually putting your charcoal to work. In today's example, I'm going to draw a dog. I like dogs. And so you can see that I sketched it out in pencil first, and that is how I always start my charcoal drawings, is with a light pencil sketch. I used a regular ass mechanical pencil to sketch this out. And when I sketch, I put in a lot of extra marks. I do marks that suggest where the shadow is going to be, and marks just to find my object. If you were using the grid method, you'd also have all of the marks of your grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my kneaded eraser first, and I'm going to lightly use that to remove the excess charcoal. You can see that I've also done a few other things to set myself up for success. I have a scrap piece of paper here that I'm using to hold down my paper so that I don't get my fingerprints all over this thing, because the charcoal will pick up on that. And I also have an extra sheet of paper below my sheet of paper because I want to be careful that I'm not going to pick up the texture of my drawing surface because charcoal is so sensitive. So the extra piece of paper just makes it a sort of super smooth surface for me to be working on. So I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and the first thing I'm going to do is just drag it all over my whole drawing. And I know that seems kind of scary, but we're going to redefine everything with charcoal. And if I have too much graphite on my drawing, charcoal and graphite, they fight each other sometimes. Graphite will resist charcoal, so I want to be sure that my drawing surface will be receptive to charcoal. So as I discussed before, I personally like to move from the least processed version of charcoal, fine charcoal, to a more processed version, which is compressed charcoal, and then finish it with the most processed version, charcoal pencil. So for that reason, I'm beginning with vine. This is a really long piece of vine charcoal, and it's really thin. Let me go into my pack and see what else I've got. If you've got a pack like this, they'll all be different shapes and sizes. So this one here is a little bit bigger, which will be nice for making big broad marks. I can see that it's kind of shiny on the edge, which means that it needs to be broken in. So I'm going to rub it on some sandpaper, because otherwise it might not actually draw. You can rub it on cement, works really well, or anything. Then I broke it in half because I wanted a smaller size. And the thing of it is you can break these in half, you can draw with them any way you want. And when I'm using the vine, the first moves I make are going to be large sweeping moves to sort of lay out my basic values. So I have it in my head that in my drawing of a dog, he's sitting against a wall or something, and that wall is pretty dark, so his shadow, because his shadow is cast onto it. So I'm going to draw with some vine charcoal there. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the vine charcoal to just draw into other areas that I know are kind of dark. You can see I'm using it on its side, and I'm using it pretty liberally because, just wait for it, I'm eventually going to smudge. And I want the background to be darker than the dog. And so that's what I've done. And it looks like a mess, and that's fine. When you start your charcoal drawings at first, they're gonna look like a huge mess, and they might feel slightly out of control because it might be a little bit hard to see your pencil lines. So you can add less value and take it slower than I am, but for the sake of this demo, I'm just moving kind of fast so you can see how things transform. So I laid down the value, and then I'm smudging it. I'm smudging it with this little piece of leather, but a piece of a t-shirt or a Kleenex or something also works great and works about the same. And as I smudge with my little piece of cloth, I am thinking about also, what am I thinking about? Oh, I'm getting into the drawing, but I'm also thinking about moving the value around to other spots in the drawing that are going to have similar grays. So like I know that right now this piece of cloth is so dirty that when I press it down, it makes its own marks. So I'm using it to draw. I'm basically using it as a drawing tool. That's one of the things about charcoal, is you draw with the charcoal itself, yes, but every other tool you have that the charcoal touches and that gets dirty with the charcoal then also becomes its own special drawing tool. So you can see that I already started to lay out more value with the cloth. And because this is a kind of small drawing and I don't have, I need to smudge this here. I don't have a whole lot of areas of dark black. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of the compressed charcoal into the darkest areas, and then I'm going to move to my charcoal pencil. So I'm adding just a little bit of really dark. And what you would do in this case is you would look at your composition and find the areas of pure black, add it with the charcoal pencil or the compressed charcoal, and then smudge those areas in. Why I recommend that you do this now is so that you get a sense of the full range of value. One of the cool things about charcoal is that it allows you to build up a full, really dramatic range of value in a way that pencil and other things don't necessarily. So the earlier on in your drawing that you can identify what areas are going to be pure black versus what areas are going to stay almost close to white. Like in my drawing, I'll have this be a highlight, this be a highlight, but then I know that these areas where I've drawn in with the compressed charcoal, I will eventually build them up to a deep black. So now I've got my little smudge stick and it's got the compressed charcoal on it. And the compressed charcoal, again, it's much darker than the vine. And so I can use it, the compressed charcoal, on this thing, this smudgy thing, to go ahead and start adding more value into areas. And you can see that I'm literally drawing with it. So I pick up value by smudging it into my dark areas, and then I carry the value that's on it into the areas that I want to be lighter. And you'll also notice that I am focusing on the dog's face, but at no point am I allowing only one part to be worked on. I'm trying to work everything up to about the same level of finish at the same time, so that in the end that it feels like a really cohesive drawing. So here we go. I've got vine. I've got some compressed. At this point, I'm going to go in with some charcoal pencil. I'm going to begin, well, I guess this is a soft pencil, but it's the one that I have that's sharpened, so I'm going to go for it. If you, I would recommend using a soft or a medium pencil once your drawing is at a stage like this. And so I'm going to, now what I'm going to do with my charcoal pencil is I'm going to go back in and basically start to reestablish all of the lines that I had in my original drawing, but that were lost when I added the dark charcoal. So the thing about starting your charcoal drawing out with pencil is that you're going to lose your pencil marks. So you don't want to get so attached to your pencil marks at an early stage in a drawing that then you get afraid of adding charcoal later on. The pencil marks you can think of them as an underdrawing, which means that they're just sort of like the structure, the infrastructure that allows you to then build the values of your charcoal drawing on top of it. So I lost almost all of these lines, but I can see some evidence of them just below where I've added in the charcoal, and now I'm going back in with a charcoal pencil. Some tips about using charcoal pencil. Don't press down super hard. I kind of like, personally, and everybody's gonna have a different style. I personally like to have a kind of like a bit of a wispy, is that the right word? Wispy effect? Yeah. Like I'm almost sort of hatching when I add it in, because I want to feather in my lines and make them kind of light, with the knowledge that that will allow them to blend more easily in with the future value that I add. So here you can see that I'm starting to, I'll go ahead and add his eyes so you can kind of see that he's looking at you. I'm adding a lot of the dark areas. In the darkest areas where I started to add in the charcoal pencil, or the compressed charcoal, I'm going to go back in with my charcoal pencil and just sort of color those areas in. And the one thing that's really nice about the charcoal pencil versus the other forms of charcoal is that it allows you to have a lot more control with what you're drawing. So if, as you're watching this, the initial steps of this drawing were really freaking you out, where I like erased all of my pencil marks and kind of had everything be super loose for a while there, if that feels so uncomfortable to you that you literally don't know if you can do it, then know that you can build up value really slowly using just your charcoal pencils if you want, instead of going in with the compressed charcoal. The drawback of that is that it does take a lot longer to build up value, and if you use all the different types of charcoal together, your drawing will come together a lot faster. This is the dog's collar here, which I need to start working on a little bit. And just like I was doing with the other type of charcoal, I'm trying not to just pay attention to one area at a time. Rather, I'm trying to move all of my info around so that I can be like, oh, if I've added some value here, now when I look at his muzzle, now the muzzle appears to be a little bit too bright, but if I darkened it on that side, then I'll need to darken it on this side, and then I realize I need to maybe define some of this side of the face, and if I did that, then I want to move out into this area here, and if I did that, then I want to, make the shape of the dog's chest a little bit more defined, and so on. Okay, so then once I've done that with charcoal pencil, I sort of think of this as like a cycle. Like, okay, you add some charcoal, then you smudge it. Then with the tools that you use to smudge it, in this case I'm going to use a Q-tip. With the tools that you use to smudge it, then you use that tool to add more value somewhere else. And then when you've added more value somewhere else, then you realize that you want to go back in with a different kind of charcoal. So like now I'm smudging. I'm smudging the charcoal pencil that I just added, and now that I'm smudging that, I'm thinking to myself, well, I want to define the background a little bit more with some compressed charcoal, and then when I do that, I'm probably going to want to add in maybe a little bit more vine in some areas so that I get a little bit more gray in some areas. And then, oh, but I'm losing some detail. This is what the inside of my head sounds like. So, you know, guess I'll go back in with some charcoal pencil. And when I smudged this round of charcoal pencil, you can see that it smudged pretty easily, and a lot of that is because I used a soft charcoal pencil. So next up, I probably want to use a harder charcoal pencil, like a medium or a hard, so that I can get detail that stays in place a little bit better. So like now I'm going to go, this is my medium pencil, and even as I draw with my medium pencil, I can feel that it's holding onto the surface a lot more than my soft one was. So I'm using it to draw. Now, the dark of the dog's nose. Now, be careful. Some caveats, some things you gotta watch out for. If you have an area where you want to have light highlight next to dark, like on the edge here of the dog's nose, I wanted a white highlight right there. I'm going to try and, as much as possible, not draw directly onto that white highlight, because once you draw directly, especially with the charcoal pencil, onto any area, you won't really be able to erase it, like full stop, like ever. It's just, your paper is just going to be dark in that spot for eternity. So keep in your mind, and you might even want to draw like notes for yourself on your own drawing, areas that you for sure want to have light highlights. In those areas, you don't ever want to draw directly with charcoal if you can avoid it. So I'm adding some areas of dark there, and as I do, like this here, this area below the dog's chin, the dog's chin is getting quite dark. However, when I press down all the way with my medium pencil, I can get a super dark. So what I'm doing there is establishing relative values with dark. I want to show you, that was with the medium pencil, you can get all of those really nice darks. I also want to say that you don't need to use it just for darks. You can also use your pencil to create texture. So here I'm working to create like the texture of dog's fur and some of the shading around dog's eye. So I first draw in the areas that I want to have be totally dark, and then I use my pencil to, from there, draw texture. And since I was drawing that with a bit harder pencil, more of that texture that I've added is going to stay. And when I go in and shade it, I'm using one of these smudgers that has like a pretty fine tip, and so I'm basically dragging the residue of some of those marks into the lighter areas, and I'm using the very like small surface area of the point of this as its own drawing tool. So there we go. And you can really use this to build up textures and shifts from light to dark that happen very slowly. Now I'm going in. Now you see what I'm doing is I feel like I've drawn a lot on that one eye, and so now I want to go over to the next, and I'm already trying to get it so that it's at the same level, so that it doesn't, so that nothing in the drawing feels like it's unfinished by comparison. eyes are one area, especially where you want to be careful, like with the white of the eye. I do want there to be some areas inside of his eye that are going to remain completely bright. And so for that reason, I'm trying not to add any charcoal into those areas at any point. You'll notice that I'm also kind of working in an almost hatched style when I'm adding marks. I really like the personally, I like the contrast between areas that are very smooth shading versus areas that have a bit of line, but that really depends on what you're drawing and what style you're going for ultimately. So some people really prefer to have a style where you can't see any lines at all. It's all just completely smooth. If you want an effect that's completely smooth, what I would recommend is to have an excess, like a scrapped piece of paper, whoops, that you draw onto with charcoal. And then you can use your smudging tool to grab charcoal from your scrap piece of paper and use the charcoal that you've grabbed and use that as your drawing tool. So that way, when you add, here we go, I'm going to take it from my scrap here. That way, when you're adding value, you don't have any lines whatsoever. All you've got is just areas of soft value. And you'll need to keep replenishing that, so you can, as soon as it starts to get a little bit tired, you just put some more on, and then I'll use this tool this time here. So this will allow you to get value without having to worry about getting any excess lines onto your drawing, if that is definitely not the vibe you're going for. So then some other thoughts that I have would be the eraser is a super powerful tool, and you can use the eraser to like really change the entire nature of your drawing. Like now that I've got this going, well, I don't like that, so I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up, and I'm going to I'm going to add some brightness into his eyes, and I'm going to use my eraser sort of to in such a way to kind of suggest highlights, but also maybe describe the way that his fur falls. I'm also getting rid of, I can still see just a tiny bit of a shadow of some of my pencil marks, so I'm getting rid of them now. And let's say that I wanted to add something into the background, because I have a lot of value here. I could, maybe he's setting against a chain link fence. I could take my eraser and a ruler, and I'm not even adding any lines here, I'm just any drawn lines. I'm just going to erase out some marks, and I'm doing this with my eraser that is held inside of this container, but you could do it with any other type of eraser as well. I just like this because it allows me more control. And if you have a mechanical pencil or some other kind of pencil, that'll work about the eraser, and that will work about the same. So there you can see that I've erased out, that's not geometric, but anyway, I've erased out some marks here, which I could then, if I wanted to make that into a chain link fence, I could go back in, and I'm going to use a brush to brush off my excess. You can see I'm not using my hand because I don't want to smudge it. Like I've erased out some highlights, and then I could go in and I could make that look like a chain link fence in the background if I wanted to. So I can work in a reductive way with value, meaning you start with value, you take some of it away, and then I work additively, so I'm adding some back. I will do a little bit more work on this, and I'll show you what it looks like within 5 minutes. Hey folks! As you can see, this drawing is at a point where it's visible, but I would say it's not quite done yet. I'm not super happy with it, and as you can tell, charcoal drawing takes a long time. It starts out very messy, and it's only with a lot of time and a lot of passes that you get to a place where it's highly detailed and everything is fully rendered. So don't get frustrated at first, and stick with it. I look forward to seeing what you make. Thank you so much for watching.